let's go to the questions. We had the pigeonholes. I think the questions are there. Let us take some of the top questions, and then I was looking through the question, and we are able to actually to group some of the questions together. And maybe at the end we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. Then you can just ask. There are mics on the aisles. If you are asking a question, please put up your hand. I can spot you and identify yourself before. Let's get to the first question, which is this one. There you go. All right. Any other assistance schemes besides PIC that caters for training courses that are not related to SkillsFuture? There's an example here, overseas training courses for employees on automation machinery. I think there are, but maybe Timothy? Yeah.
I'm not sure who asked this question, but could I just clarify what is meant by training courses that are not related to SkillsFuture? Do you mean not funded by SkillsFuture, or do you mean something else? I don't know who asked this question. No clarification. No. Okay. The quick answer is that training courses are generally funded now through SkillsFuture. SkillsFuture is our overarching support. Many of the programs under SkillsFuture are individual support schemes, like the SkillsFuture Credit. At the same time, there are things like SkillsFuture Study Awards, SkillsFuture Fellowships, which fund up to higher quantums and which fund courses which are both local as well as overseas. People can choose the course that they engage in. There are also more targeted support schemes on a sector-by-sector level. So, for instance, IDA is offering up to a 70% subsidy on user interface, user experience design courses for the ICT industry, and there are many other such course supports on an industry level. So, without a bit more detail, I'm not sure how much more I can say about this, but yes, there are assistance schemes besides PIC.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. Okay, let's get on to another one. Now, the next couple of questions are for the construction foreign workers levy, and I don't have an MOM colleague on the panel. I guess again MOF might want to take this. The construction sector comprises about 70% of SMEs, small-size SME companies. It also has about 300,000 foreign workers. The industry is also contracting. So why is the foreign workers levy increased for this industry, not deferred? So this is the first question. I will put that as answered. And then there is another question I want to pull up, which is also on construction, not also on construction, but also on foreign workers levy. If I can find it. There is one here. Thoughts on impact on the increased foreign levy and SPAS levy versus low Singaporeans in construction, low profits, high admin safety costs. So it's relating to the construction industry and the levies and the tougher conditions in the industry. So I suggest to take these two questions in turn, together.
Thanks very much. I think you see two different perspectives on the construction industry already from these two questions. The first one said that they thought the construction industry was contracting. The second one said in high risk in view of increased construction investment. Presumably that means that the construction sector is increasing. So essentially, as I mentioned earlier, we expect the construction sector not to contract this year. Even though private sector construction demand is falling, public sector construction demand is going to more than offset the decrease in private sector demand. That's our expectation. Therefore, the question then becomes, why is it that we are still increasing foreign worker levies? The answer is quite, I mean, you would not have heard anything different. we expect that the construction industry still needs to continue its restructuring, still needs to increase capital investment in particular. Our capital investment levels in the construction industry in Singapore lag far, far, far behind more developed countries like Australia, the UK, and the US. We have just increased our support for the construction productivity movement under the Construction Productivity Fund, CPCF. We are increasing both the amounts and quantum that each company can be supported under, which is particularly targeted at our SMEs. Most companies have not reached anywhere near their maximum cap of support level for investment in equipment. We would like to encourage companies to take this up. That's why we are not decreasing our or not freezing foreign worker levies, because we still want to encourage companies to invest in productivity equipment, which will then answer part of the second question, which is aimed at making the industry both more productive, able to offer higher salaries, as well as safer with the use of greater and higher productivity construction equipment.
Timothy, since you have the mic, I must well add this question to you, because it's also related to the construction sector, and it is about the fact that you said that there will be more jobs. Here is specifically about 70% of the companies are SMEs, but they are only permitted to bid for government project which has less than 6 million. But if you classify 100 million as small projects, then what is there for the small company? I think essentially this is what this question is asking.
So I need to clarify that when we say that classifying projects of less than 100 million as smaller projects, this doesn't mean that we think that all projects $100 million and below are just small, full stop. Over the past 5 years, as we've engaged in foreign worker levy tightening, we've seen a number of firms upgrade and become more able to take on more complex projects. So rather than just having purely foreign firms now taking on complex projects and then subcontracting to subcontractors, a number of Singapore construction firms have progressed through the different classifications to be able to take on more complex construction projects. So the answer to this is there's no inconsistency with what I'm talking about with regard to smaller construction projects versus the definitions of small construction projects less than 6 million. It's just a reflection of how these projects are tendered for and the kinds of companies which get these projects. You don't expect companies which have certain capabilities to bid for a $100 million project, but they would be a subcon of the main con of the project. I must confess, however, that I'm not totally familiar with the construction portfolio because this is under the Ministry of Manpower, and I would invite, if there's additional feedback, to please approach MUM for this.
Thank you. Timothy, thanks. I've got something for Francis, I think. I think I enjoyed thoroughly your... I think you obviously didn't include this in the presentation, so that's why a lot of people are asking you, what is the outlook of the Sing dollar versus other regional currencies versus the US dollar? Maybe a short one from you.
Yeah, a short one, not a half an hour one. Well, if you recall, the dollar to Sing reached a high of 144. When? This year. Around January, it was still 144. Anyone knows today's rate? 134, 10 big figure down. So that have caused a lot of shock to many, especially importers who need to pay in US dollars. We understand that. The long-term trajectory, long-term, you're going to ask me, economists say long-term means when? Means when we are all dead, right? No. The medium term, okay, whatever term, is at least until the end of this year. We are still seeing the trend for US dollar to Sing moving higher. Perhaps this 134 is about the lowest that we can see in this period already. I am an economist who also look at technical charts, basically. And this morning, I just overlaid my technicals over the dollar Sing. Probably, I think it was way too oversold. And the reason why it was oversold is not because of MAS making any remarks this year compared to last year. It was really because of what's happening over in the US side. Janet Yellen was exceptionally dovish. She had to do so. Everywhere else, people are adopting negative interest rates, doing QE, more QE, Japan doing QQE, right? So she has to play by the same tune. So she was exceptionally dovish. She said that probably this year from a dot plot, it's going to be 2 interest rate hike from a previous 4. So from that, the market was overselling the dollar Sing. I'm looking for a pickup from 134, right? So if you're going to ask me, oh, should I enter to buy? Remember, I have a disclaimer just now. I think now it looks like an attractive time, 134. Okay, the longer term trend is still intact, basically for a higher dollar swing. I'm not seeing a shift in the trend. And this trend in dollar swing has been intact since 2012. So every time, I mean, currencies are like that, they are like people, you know, got mood one, sometimes high, sometimes low, right? But you was trading within this channel, and this channel is still intact. I don't foresee any structural change in the trend yet. Okay, hope you understand that. Thanks.
Thank you. I move on to a series of questions about definition of SMEs and whether MNCs qualify for some of this incentive. And Simon from Spring next to me is going to answer this, but maybe I tee up this particular question first. With the rapid changes to the business operating environment, does the government see the need to also evolve its definition on SMEs?
Well, is it possible if, let's say, I talk about the automation support package first, then I come to this? Yeah, okay. So actually there's a whole host of questions related to the automation support package. Whether, MNCs qualify, what kind of technology will be supported, what's the definition of automation, and so on. So maybe let me take a step back to explain Spring as the National Local Enterprise SME Agency, what we've been doing. We actually have been supporting companies when they do the pilot introduction of new technology. So a lot of this is oriented towards productivity. So let's say I'm a restaurant chain owner. I want to try out some new technologies in the kitchen or in the front of the house. So what Spring has been doing to help such business owners is to try the pilot on one location. But so we actually provided the co-funding for the implementation at that first location. When proven to work, we basically were limited, up to this current budget, where we basically had to let the business owner decide and carry on to what degree do they want to roll it out to their other locations. So now with this automation support package, it's quite powerful. Basically, we're able to co-fund it so that they can roll it out to multiple locations. So in terms of questions related to, what's technology, is robotics, I would say that generally certain types of technology have come out and, been proven. So I'll say that we are not, those are the things that we generally will look towards. We are also open to new areas of technology that may come about. So it's not hard and fast related, so it's not hard and fast and closely limited to just only a small subset of technologies. Okay, how do SMEs qualify? Well, yes, I'll just say that when you say use in conjunction, if what you mean is double incentivization, then the answer is no. So for example, if let's say this particular investment has been covered by one program, it will not be covered by the other program. But obviously when you talk about scale up and you talk about robotics, obviously there's a lot of common ground that we can discuss together. Okay, then I think, local, okay. Okay, so based on the discussion that I just, or maybe just one last point, which I think I didn't really cover, which is MNCs, are they eligible? So based on what I described, you can see that the automation support package is very much directed towards SMEs and the local enterprises, because the concept here is that, okay, I pilot and then I deploy. Now, if let's say I'm a foreign investor, I'm an MNC, I want to bring in activities into Singapore, then generally speaking, one would assume that many of the foreign investors would already have a range of international locations where a lot of their new technologies and pilots will have taken place, and what they deploy here is actually well optimized and suited, for the cost capability that we have. But I also, I'll just close off by saying, having said that, if let's say there are any MNCs here that are interested to develop groundbreaking new technologies and pilot them in Singapore, certainly EDB will be keen, to have a conversation with you on that to see how they can help you. Okay, now going back to 30%, less than 200. Well, does the government also see the need to evolve its definition? We evolved it a few years ago because some of you may remember that the definition of a manufacturing SME, a long time, okay, not very long, but about roughly around 2010, I think, was a bit archaic. It was based on a definition that was in place for a long time, and it was, if I remember correctly, net fixed assets of $15 million. So it was an asset-based definition that defined whether you were an SME or not. So we have evolved because we realized that, comparing with US, Western Europe, for example, many European countries, they define an SME as about 60 million euros, thereabouts. So when we did a review across various developed economies, many of them converged to around 100 million in turnover and 200 employees worldwide. So that's why we have evolved that. And so I'll just say that we do it periodically, although there's no impending plan to do it right now. Then the distinction of 30% local shareholding and grants, I guess the thinking is that because one fact that I think is important to highlight is that there are about 180,000 enterprises in Singapore, large and small, foreign and local, and 110,000 of them have less than 1 million turnover a year. So those are the public statistics, and certainly we feel that many of these smaller companies, they do need a boost and a helping hand to help them to effectively compete in today's business world. So coming back to 30% local and all that, I'll just say that it is largely dictated by limited resources. So we do not have infinite resources to be able to help every single company in Singapore. So that's why we do have to have some cut-off somewhere, be it 100 million, 200 employees, or 30%. And I think a key point to remember is that even with this definition, more than 99% of the enterprises out there do fall within the definitions. So that's the answers I have.
Thank you, Simon. Since there are two questions there that quite high number of votes, I will do them now. The first question is looking at increasing rental rates at commercial building. I thought the rates are coming down, actually. Will there be any form of support available for SMEs and MNCs to tap on in order to put them through, get them through the winter period? I'm not sure, but...
Mr. Ho is absolutely right. The trend that we seem to be seeing is decreasing rental rates, both in commercial estates, industrial estates, as well as commercial buildings, except for the core central area where some rental rates in particular buildings and malls are still increasing. So the short answer is at this point we are monitoring it, but no, we do not intend to put in place rental support at this point. There needs to be some course correction in the market. I believe some of you would have read the articles last week by the CEO of the Al Futtaim Group that owns John Little and Robinsons that called upon landlords to adjust rental rates down. There's some of these dynamics that need to work their way through, and government is not in the business of undermining market forces.
Yeah, thanks. If I may just add on a little bit, there seems to be a sentiment, from the polling that Serene announced about what more can the budget do for us. And there is a sense, I think, from I think many of you that maybe the budget has not helped reduce business costs as much. And maybe this question is a reflection of those sentiment about the increased costs, which has not been totally addressed to satisfaction of businesses, particularly small businesses. Anyway, let's go on to, there's something here. Very interesting. Just came out 19. I'm not sure who wanted to have a crack of it. Is a motherhood. Why do we have to pay taxes for all the grant received from the government?
Yeah, I think I will have to take that question. Yes. Right. Why do we have to pay tax for all the grants received from the government? Actually, you don't have to pay tax on all the grants you receive from the government. I'm not too sure how many of you here are tax practitioners, maybe with a show of hand, or understand the tax concept of revenue versus capital. None. Okay. So for tax purposes, you know that you don't pay capital tax in Singapore, right? Because capital gains tax, we don't have a capital gains tax, but we pay tax on our income. So income is like revenue, and your capital gains from your ad hoc selling of shares, capital in nature. So the same thing for grants. It can be classified into capital grants and revenue grants. So in essence, right, the grants are taxable only if it is used to supplement your trading receipt, or it is used to defray your operating costs. Example of that will be like your wage credit that you get because it's to help you with the rising labor costs, and things like your what else? Your PSC bonus, which was given for YA 2013 to YA 2015 when you invest in PSC qualifying activities. So for non-taxable grants are more akin to those are more grants that are given to you to acquire capital assets. So if you have a grant from your agency to purchase an equipment, that grant will not be taxable, right? So when it is not taxable, the thing is that you can still claim capital allowance on the asset. So in a way, you don't get taxed, but you still claim the amount that has been used to, by the grant, defrayed by the grant, to purchase that equipment in your CA claim. Yeah. So if you're interested to know what are the taxability of some of the common grants, right, you can refer to IRA's website. There's an IRA's website on taxability of grant. And if you are ever going to apply to your agencies for a grant, please make sure they tell you whether the grant is taxable or not taxable. So it is very important for SME, if you go to an agency to ask for a grant, go and ask them what is the objective and whether this grant will be taxable so that you can include it in your tax com. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I will go to that question on number 9 with 19 votes, and this is a question on skills future. There's nobody from MOM or WDA or MOE here, but I think it's an important question. With this skill future gaining traction, will diploma, undergraduate, and graduate degree be recognized by MOE, as this has not always been the case in the past? It's about standards. Yeah.
Again, can I ask a clarification here? What do you mean by recognized by MOE? Do you mean recognized by MOE for their hiring practices, or cross-certification of courses, or what exactly is meant by this? Sorry, I do need to ask this. Yep.
In context of the question, I think you had hit it on the spot regarding to the transferability of the courses that WDA has issued out, whether they can be used, let's say you take similar courses in MOE, whether the credits are transferable.
Transferable? You mean courses that you might take at a private educational institution transferable to MOE courses in our polytechnics or universities, is it?
Yes, correct. Because they are actually under the WDA framework.
Okay, so unfortunately, this example can get a little bit technical. Wei Yang can also add on if need be, but in short, both WDA and MOE maintain their own course certification and correspondence processes because they need to maintain the integrity of the degrees that are issued by our educational institutions, whether within our polytechnics or our universities. They need to ensure that the degrees and the certificates that are issued are of an equal value. The courses that are offered at PEIs may not offer the exact same content, the quality, or the exact correspondence with our MOE courses. So as and when they want to cross-certify and cross-recognize, they do need to apply to MOE for these sorts of cross-correspondences.
The purpose I posed that question is because given this disparity, there is an impression that WDA courses of lesser quality, and this affects the receptiveness of these qualifications in the market.
Okay, right. I want to get on to some of the questions. I was looking through some of the questions which are actually relevant to broaden the discussion here. And there's a question on SG Innovate, and I just pull it up here. Will SG Innovate be relevant to SME startup partnerships instead of just huge enterprise tie-ups? And just ask Wei Yang for NRF to elaborate on SG Innovate.
Yeah, so actually the focus for SG Innovate is on the startup technology-driven, innovation-driven enterprises space. So it's actually not in a huge enterprise space that the SG Innovate actually will try to facilitate the work for. A large part of that is that we have actually been investing in our R&D base over the past, I would say, 10, 15 years. I think over time we have managed to build up a base that's actually quite established. I think a lot of people are now saying that we have a lot of technologies that we are actually generating from the R&D research. And actually what we do need now is people who can actually take that technology and bring it to market. And we do also need companies who are actually able to come and look for those technologies and figure out actually how this can be adapted to their markets, or even coming out with a new business model and saying, actually, this is a new area, and for which I may need a new technology, and coming to the research institutes to say, actually, I need this technology. Can you help us to do research in this area so as to generate a new product line or a new market opportunity, or even a new market in some sense, because it could be a particular region that for which we had not previously served and for which they actually need something. So a large part of what SG Innovate tries to do is to say, how can we make this process a little bit more organic, a little bit more active and dynamic? And actually, so rather than to actually worry about the cost of today, can we look at what are some of the opportunities in the future and actually work on some of these things together? And of course, depending on the nature of the industry, some may not require large companies to be part of it, but some may require large companies to be part of the partnership, because many startups actually sell in a trade sale to a large company because they don't have the muscle to sell to markets. They do need to partner. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that startups could actually launch an IPO, especially if their markets are easily accessible. For example, the ICT startups, typically it's quite easy to actually access the customers on the internet, so they may not actually need a large company to be a partner. But something like, for example, medical technologies may require a partner who actually can manufacture the product for you and actually has an established base of hospitals or doctors that actually sell the products to. Of course, there could also be some that actually goes online for sales and so on, so there will be variations. But I think a large part of it is how do we make innovation something that's more pervasive. And once you have startups in the various sectors which are actually sort of like coming up with new ideas, new technologies, new ways of doing things, new markets, what we're also hoping is that it begins to let SMEs also sit down and say, hey, actually, couldn't I have been that company? Because you are just as small, you're potentially just as nimble, you could potentially have been that company. So they may start looking for technologies as well. And the large companies will start saying, hey, there's so many interesting things happening around, can I actually partner with these companies and actually begin to expand the range of my activities as well? So what we are hoping, of course, is a catalytic effect in terms of innovation becoming much more pervasive among our companies. But sometimes companies don't know where to look. Sometimes companies don't really know how to even begin thinking about it. So a large part of it is how do we begin to get people in this mindset, look for small companies that may actually try to do some of these things. They may or may not succeed, but in that process, they learn how to do some of these things. Those who fail in the startup may actually come and work for your company, for example, and they may actually help you to figure out how to navigate this area because they've been trying their best to do some of these things. So I think a lot of it is, it's about the technology, it's about the manpower, it's about making the links and actually helping everyone to up the game in terms of innovation. So that's really what we're trying to achieve with SG Innovate.
Thank you, Wei Yang. If I may just call up this question on the TACs and generally what government can, whether businesses have the tools and ability to move forward with the current measures, budget measures. Angeline? Okay, what can TACs do to help collaboration efforts between businesses and government? So that's the first question.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment a little bit more from IE Singapore. I mean, we are the agency that helps the companies to venture overseas. And you can see that from this year's budget, it takes a very long-term view as to how is it that we can help the industry to transform. And clearly, from the government perspective, we don't know all the answers. And how is it that we can harness the resources, both from the industries as well as with the associations, to help everyone to figure through this economic uncertainty, right? So from the TAC's angle currently, from the government perspective, we actually do have the LEAD program, which is the Local Enterprise and Association Development Program. This is a program jointly administered between SPRING and IE. And we think of ways as to how is it that we can actually benefit the industries. So from IE, I speak from our experience, we work with the TACs as to how is it that we can better the chances of our companies when they venture overseas. So I just want to quote some good examples that we have worked with the TACs just to give a very concrete sense as to how the programs can actually be useful to the industry, right? So one example that we had is actually a collaboration that we had with SCCI, Singapore Chinese Chambers. And for these Singapore Chinese Chambers, we helped them to set up an overseas center in China, being the fact that, frankly, China is actually a very key destination for our SMEs to venture overseas. And while IE have our officers down there, we also acknowledge that we cannot handle all the volumes and interests of all the SMEs. So as SCCI actually set up an overseas center, this has been for a few years already, and they are also out there outreaching to the SMEs, sharing with them, the market intelligence, the outreach, the context as to how to figure out the market. Yeah. So this is just one example. I just wanted to come in from a very concrete way as to what it means by through a program, we are working with the associations to help the industries. Now, as to this question, whether do we think that we already have tools and abilities in these current budget measures? I think that the thing is actually don't only look at the current budget measures, because with every budget, we only talk about what are the programs that we are introducing, what are the enhancements that we are going to take, right? But it doesn't show the breadth of all the existing measures that we have. And I think that is very key, because if you only look at what has been enhanced, clearly it is not sufficient. But if you look at all the whole breadth of all the schemes and all, then we think that, we think a lot every year as to what else is there. And our sense is really to hear from the businesses as to what are some of that's actually really lacking. But we also would like to appeal to the associations and also to the industries to also, get a sense as to the whole breadth of all the programs out there that's actually available, and not only just look at the current budget measures, because it actually constitutes a lot more than the current set.
Maybe I'll just add on a bit on the question as to how can any particular TAC put its hand up. So Spring and IE have had a terrific partnership, working with TACs. I think we have about 35 that we have supported over the years already. I think what allows it to happen is that you have a few council members of the TAC identifying a need and proposing a solution. Then they come to talk to the agencies. A lot of times is okay. How do you want to go about it? How do you want to implement it? And what kind of funding support is needed? Then I think the TACs would have a very key role in rallying its members to actually come and use the solution. So I think that's one key point to highlight. I think also the message I think we would like to send is no TAC too small. So actually there's a association of school bus drivers, transport operators, Singapore School Transport Association, we're actually talking to them. And I think one I can elaborate on is the Crane Association, because, construction cranes and all kinds of cranes, basically that association is not very large, but they feel that it's very important to have a proper safety record and experience record of all their crane operators. So they actually have come to us with the desire to set up a registry of crane operator experience, so that when the industry wants to hire the crane operators, it is a more reliable record that's in place. So that is, I think, a good example to highlight that even a very specialized association, it is still quite possible for them to identify the need, step forward, propose a solution, and then after that, once the solution is in place, to rally the members to make use of it.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I've just flashed out. There are a couple of specific questions on taxes and specific schemes. We'll get back to you, but this is something for Cindy. Cindy, if you don't have the ready answer, you can. Do you have one? Okay, if not, then whoever asks, you can see Cindy.
I think there's a timeline, given for this to take effect. Certainly, you cannot backdate it to 2011. Don't think that is on. Any changes usually is forward rather than, go back.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you. All right. That's all right. I can take a couple of questions from the floor. All right, that's gentleman over there. You're the first one up.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Teck Soon. I'm from Transsystem FA, an automation company. My question is for Mr. Timothy Yap. The government is going to invest and spend up to $4 billion for industry research collaboration to deepen the country's innovations capability. May I know, number one, who will be the direct recipient of this fund? Number two, who will be the direct beneficiary of the innovation? Number three, how will the be transferred? And fourthly, how will be the result be measured? Yeah, that's my question.
Actually, I think Wei Young might be in a better place to answer this from the National Research Foundation. He's directly involved in the research environment.
Yeah. So a large part of that is actually meant to support projects between our research, sort of like, I'll say research base of people. So people like SimTech and so on that you might be used to, together with our companies to build capabilities together on specific projects, joint projects that they work out together on. So we're hoping that in that process, we are building capability both on the side of the research institutions, as well as the companies as well who are actually involved. And depending on the size of the company, there will be different types of possibilities. Some of it could actually be not directly with an A-star kind of a research institute. It could be with the poly centers of innovation, for example, for which the technology is actually brought to a level where maybe the SMEs are maybe more able to adopt or adapt easily. So even, for example, automation, I'm not sure how you do automation. If there are specific automation capabilities and possibilities that could be developed, that could benefit the entire sort of like sector, then I think, again, there could be some possibilities there. So, I mean, the $4 billion is a large sort of like overall, but there are various things that try to address sort of different perspectives. Some of it could also be more long-term, where actually we work with a cluster of companies in a consortium who are saying actually going forward, we are seeing this technology in 5 to 10 years. Can we begin to work on it now and build those capabilities? And we do welcome SMEs to be part of that consortium as well, so that we are building capabilities as a cluster of large companies, small companies, all working on the cutting edge technologies. So that's kind of the broad sort of like things we hope to achieve with that.
Okay. Thank you for answer. Actually, I have 4 questions there. I think you answer the first 2 questions. I think, as you mentioned earlier, that innovation has been taken up at a very high level and has not been translated into the result over the last couple of years. So what I heard just now is that you will still do the same thing. Yeah. What will be done differently to translate this in the future? Because now that this kind of policy comes out with the industrial transformation, will give you more kind of kind of urgency to push it down. Yeah, that's why my last question is on how will be the result be measured. Yeah, and I hope that can be answered.
Sure. So in terms of the results, I think one of the things that we are looking at now going forward would be like number of jobs that may be created as a result of some of these projects, number of revenue that's actually generated. But then these are all things that we will be looking at, because the reality is actually some of these things, like you said, previously we were trying to build a research base. Now we've got the research base. We're trying to see how do we make sure this research base works hard for us going forward. So I think that's the part that we're now saying, okay, but how do we measure some of the things? When I do a research project, I think we are working on some of these measures as well. And I think ultimately all these things we must measure in terms of jobs created. We must measure in terms of revenue that's actually generated and so on. So I think that part I think we are now going to define going forward. But it will take some time for us to actually measure some of these things well, and then we have some statistics for it. And then of course in terms of are we doing things differently, I think it is. This whole budget has been about how working together we can actually bring some of these technologies to real impact in terms of transforming the economy. And it's not a conceptual idea, it is actually a lot of hard work that all of us have to work together with the trade associations and so on, to actually decide actually for each industry what exactly are the technologies that would be really helpful. Why is it that something that if we brought in and everyone implemented, everyone chipped in a little bit, actually this technology will benefit everyone. And ultimately we're not competing against ourselves, but competing against the rest of the world. And how can we bring some of these things? But the question is, if you ask the research institutions, would they know? Actually, they don't know, really necessarily know. No one is talking to them. Do the companies know? They need to talk together and figure out what are some things we can do together, and then put that requirement in some sense and check maybe there's already a solution that has not been implemented yet. Then bring that solution out. Then companies like yours may help to implement some of these solutions, automation solutions and so on for the various companies. So I think a lot of it is actually how do we work together to bring some of these technologies and innovation to the front and spread it widely as our approach to the fact that we may not know. And of course, even this whole idea of skills future is to say, can I then train our people to use these new technologies so that actually we are training for the future and not for the current? Because the current may no longer be sustainable in the future. So how do we train for the future? If we know what technologies we're going to implement, then we know what to train for the future as well. And that becomes part of the entire plan in some sense.
I think the R&D, increased R&D expenditure will be a very critical part of future corporate capabilities. And personally, I see as something that you want to measure would be, for example, what is the R&D revenue made by SMEs? What are the R&D expenditure? How many research engineer and scientists are employed by SMEs? I think these are important measures that I think going forward we should scrutinize this number a little bit more, because these are indicators of whether in fact our SMEs have absorbed those capabilities that we've spent on our research institutions and RIs and universities. Okay, may I take the last questions, please? Anybody? Because I see a lot of people leaving the room already. I noticed either the last train is going out from downstairs at 5:30. No? Anybody? Last question? No? All right. If not, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for coming. There is a paper survey form which we have sent up. Please fill it up for us. It's very important. We gather this and then we give it back to the government. And please join me to thank our speakers as well as panelists for spending the whole afternoon with you. Thank you so much.